Hey, good afternoon, Dr. Neely. This is Brian Bailey. I opted to do a video this week for the week 4 project. Just to do something different, I took you up on your offer to do the video. Um, so what I did was I broke it down into two parts. I did bullet points for the PDF, so which I'll email to you and submit it for a grade. And this way you can follow along with my video, which I will post to YouTube, and then I will send you the link as well. Okay, so for this week's assignment, we were to select three principles and talk about how um, why we think that they're important in our classrooms. So what I opted to do is I read all through the principles, and I finally decided that principle one, sufficient practice interactions, positive feedback, and distributing and mixing practice among learning events are probably the most important among of the six that we had to cover and had to learn about, because I think they're the most relevant in my GD classrooms. And what I will do is I'll talk about the questions that you posed, and maybe in citation of Clark and Mayer and several other experts that I did with my research, and we'll discuss some points for each question that you posed through each of the three principles I selected. Okay. Okay, so let's get started. Principle number one: add sufficient practice interactions to e-learning to achieve the objective. Okay, so first off, let's talk about a definition. Okay, Clark and Meyer, 2011, point out that if the goal is to build knowledge and skills, then the need of practice interactions and considering the task of criticality of job performance. Well, basically, what I would say is that you have to take into consideration, can the students grasp the information you want to try to present to them? How will you present it to them, and what sort of assessments would you use? Okay. Second question that you posed is, can this principle how can the principle impact the learning when applied? Well, Kumar, 2015, points out that motivation and distributive efforts are important impacts. There's many more, but in my case, dealing with male inmates and as GD students, I find that as a GD instructor, reading and math work best with this, with the interactions, and especially in preparation for GD testing. Okay. So third question you posed, challenges associated with incorporating this principle in JIT learning. Well, I have to back up for a second. As for JIT learning, all the adult basic education and GD testing are now computerized. So there's a heavy emphasis on 21st century skills to try to get the inmates to know the GD curriculum and to take what they learn in the classrooms, apply it to the computer skills, and then to take the GD test on a computer to be scored nationally. Okay, so several points I want to make with that is that older students are going to need extra time. I mean, I've had many inmate students um, who have been sentenced in prison for 25, 30 years, and who are finally getting clemency, and they are trying to prepare for a GD test, and they're completely lost with computer skills. A lot of them, they know how to turn on a computer or operate a mouse. Second point I want to point out is the inability to understand computer functions, questions, test directions, and formats. Again, and I'm referring this back to GIT, is that you need to teach inmates a GD. You got to teach them the computer skills. Even when I do chunking or segmenting lessons and computer lessons with a lot of these students, and unfortunately, a lot of them are not going to make it. It's a sad fact I deal with every day. All right. So the fourth question you posed: what are some of the risks with failing to incorporate the principles that I'm looking at? Okay, and I selected. All right. Well, one, student frustration plays a big part. Lack of basic necessary computer skills upon release from prison to take the GD, And low scores mean no diploma certification. And then you have the fifth question, which you asked, examples of this, how this can be applied to JIT. Well, I would offer 3 points here. Developing testing skills and usage skills as suggested by 21st century in regards to computer and calculators. Low testing scores in which you need to try to boost up the areas of remediation in classroom through book work and computer work, and the inability to find clues to answer GED questions. Those are 3 major biggies that students, in my opinion, have to work on, have to focus to earn their high school diploma, the GED. Okay, moving on. The second principle that I selected was providing effective feedback. Okay? And a side note, and I also draw upon my adult education work, as well as teaching in the public schools. Feedback helps drive education. Okay, it helps provide good, positive interactions with your students and with the teacher, who are basically students and teachers are trying to work together to get through the curriculum. And sometimes it always doesn't happen. Okay, but again, talking to your students, talking to your coworkers, getting ideas, giving people feedback on what they want, what's what, who's what, how, different methods. It does make things easier. So let me make some points down with that. All right. So what are some of the definitions here? Okay. Again, I cite Clark and Meyer 2011. Clark and Meyer point out that explanatory feedback results in better learning. Okay. We know what feedback is, but that is a power statement right there. It's kind of like a power running back. Better feedback results in better learning. That's where the teacher and the student talking together, learning together, trying to overcome the question, trying to break down the question on where somebody went wrong, or maybe they got it right, but they came to a different type of conclusion. I've done it both ways. And like I said, you really see the light bulb come on with the students or the student you're working with, and would you give them a specific, right to the point feedback. Okay, so I draw upon my experience, and when I explain or break down a lesson or an example in chunks, let's say, for example, we're doing division, for example, and which is a basic skill you have to learn for the high school diploma. And I could show it right there on a computer, or I can take a dry erase board and I can work the problem, and I can do all the steps down with the students, and I'll say, okay, all right, this is here. What's this? This, and this. And again, I'm mostly successful doing that with my students. Okay, all right. And I also point out that with the majority of students I deal with, the type of students I deal with, okay, they are more receptive when you sit down with them in small groups or even one-on-one, just for a minute. Give them a minute of your time. They'll look at the problem. They'll look at what you put down on a dry erase board or paper or even on a computer, and they will go back and rework it. And again, it makes all the worthwhile when they say, "I got it. The light bulb came on." Then you can assess them again, and they can move on to harder skills. Okay. All right. So moving on. I'm sorry, I'm consulting my notes here, Dr. Neely. Okay. So how can this affect learning? Well, Wiggins wrote an article dated 2012, and she points out that goal-referenced, tangible and transparent, user-friendly, ongoing, and consistency are really important when you do. I'm sorry, well, I lost my thought here. Feedback with your students. Okay, so let's take a second, kind of break it down a little bit. Okay, all right, goal referenced. Okay, and again, when I use the long division example, all right, that's a goal. I want my students to review, remediate long division. Okay, 2. Is it tangible? Yes, they're going to need it. It's a life skill. Mathematics is a life skill. Okay. User-friendly? That depends. Okay, so like I said, older inmates, older students, and they're kind of like I don't know, I want to touch the computer. It's more like they're looking at like it's like a snake or something, or a snapping turtle ready to bite their hand off. However, the younger students, middle-aged students, guys less than 40 years, absolutely no problems. They're user friendly. They get along great. Ongoing, yes. Is it going to be day after day repetitive? No. But occasionally I'll throw a worksheet at them and say, hey, just do this as a review occasionally, just to kind of keep you sharp on division skills, okay, and consistent, okay. Adult education students, Dr. Neely, love consistency. Consistency is where you have something planned out, you do certain things, certain parts of the week, and other days, your students will perform for you. Okay. All right. So, moving on here. Let's see. Another point I want to make out for how this principle will affect learning. In the GED classroom, students thrive on teacher interaction, and there's also a whole host of new GED programs coming out where they can offer program reviews or breakdowns, especially in math, reading, and writing skills. And reading, writing, and math are basically, to quote the vernacular, the trifecta of the GED curriculum and the skills that they need to know. Okay. All right. Moving on. What are some of the challenges associated with feedback? Okay. Well, a lot of times it can be miscommunication, where I, as the educator, I am trying to make a point and I'm trying to do my best to bring it down to a lower level to where my students can understand it. There are times where students will still not understand you and they still will not comprehend what you're trying to tell them, okay? That in turn leads to another challenge of student frustration, which in turn leads to sometimes the teacher doesn't really explain fully or give the feedback that the students are looking for, all right? And then that leads to the big challenge of all, the lack of exploratory feedback of where, and the students are like, all right, I'm confused. Which direction do I go? What do I need to do here? What am I missing? And sometimes, and I have been guilty of this myself. Okay, so going to the fourth question that you've asked, what are some of the risks associated with when I fail to incorporate this principle? Okay, CAR 2014 reports that feedback can be one of the things. It can be too late in time, incomplete, and not enough information. I have been guilty of that, and several times I've caught myself. My supervisors would pull me to the side and suggest maybe check yourself, try to give the students better feedback. Okay. Other points I want to make in GED classrooms, there are times when classes are dismissed, so where you see a student completing an assignment, he or she did not do well, and you cannot get to them, or they cannot check their progress because classes are dismissed early by the wardens or security due to fights on the rec yard, riots. They're going to have some kind of drill, and I've even had classes dismissed because of inmate murders. And at times it can be a very brutal system and a very brutal on the time that you have required by state law to work with your students. Okay. However, and I also want to point out that computer programs and teachers do not get to the students in a timely fashion to properly explain or understand. Okay. How can this be applied to GIT? All right. There's a program that's in use. It's called GED Top 50. Excellent way to teach students what to look for with GED questions, but it doesn't take into account how to show the students to answer the questions, and it doesn't offer any feedback. Okay. Now, flip side of the newer programs I talked about, like such as GED Academy, a relatively new computer program offers feedback. When a student needs feedback to a question or an assessment, he can pause one screen and say, for example, I'm doing an assessment. I can pause one screen. I can take the mouse or the control pad on the laptops that we use, and I can go over to the Dr. Leonard icon and then I could click on that, and a whole new screen pops up, and it tracks what the student was doing, and it will offer the breakdowns right then and there. And sometimes as I float around the classroom assisting my students, I'll sit in and listen to what the student is doing and his or her interactions with Dr. Leonard, the computer AI, offering breakdowns of the assessment, on the questions they missed, or the problem that they're not grasping. Okay. All right. And then okay, so that's the second principle. The third principle I think is important is distributing and mixing practice among learning events. Okay. A couple quick notes from my classroom experience. Distributing and mixing up the learning events. Okay, I have found that it's not all book work and worksheets. A lot of students they enjoy going into the computer lab, working on the computer, learning the operations, looking at the graphics, the visuals, and learning at their own pace until where they understand what they are doing. Okay, so let's talk about how would I define distributing and mixing practice. Okay, let me pull my notes here. Okay, all right, hold on. Okay, again, I'm citing Clark and Mayer from 2011, and they would call this a spacing effect, and I think it's a really good definition. And where practice sessions are spaced in time are superior to mass practices of long-term retention. This is perfect for adult basic education and GED, and I'll suggest why. Is because that an ABE or GED student, they know certain reading, writing, math skills. They don't know other skills. So basically, what you can do is you can space it out where 1 or 2 days a week you can work with them in various reading skills such as vocab words, computational context, guessing the meaning of the author. Okay, or then the next day you're working with mathematics at different levels, such as fractions, decimals, percents, geometry. Okay, and they're doing it over a space of different days, different times, and where not everybody is doing the same boring thing. All right. Practice sessions of space and time are superior, right? And to me, that's awesome. And also, it can be applied to computer and calculator skills. Technology skills are being really heavily emphasized through 21st century to prepare inmates when they release upon society to have at least some basic computer knowledge and the use of skills. Point I want to make with that is that now for testing, all right, you got 3 major tests in adult education. You have TABE, pre-GED, and GED. Okay, and the test assessments are given every 30 to 90 days, depending upon the test. How can this be applied? Basically, depending on the test, what the students learn from the spacing effect on one day doing math, another day doing reading or writing skills or computer use skills. They can take what they've learned every 30 to 90 days, every 1 to 3 months, roughly, and then when they're sitting down taking the test and working away, they can at least take some of what they've learned at their own pace and then through spacing effect, and then get better skills and less remediation. Okay, so what are some of the challenges I have seen with this? One, I see that the testing formats change every 30 to 90 days. Some assessments and tests will be multiple choice. Some tests will be drop-down boxes, drag and click, typing short answers. Some tests will have a combination of all of them. And all right, students don't always have access to calculators and computers. Okay, that's another major challenge. Is you expect people to know computer and calculator skills, but they don't have access to the materials. Okay, so let's see some other. Let's see, I'm going back here referring to my notes. Okay, some other risks. Okay, again, I cite changing in test formats, 30 to 90 day rules, A lot of times you'll see the students will express frustration. They will be frustrated because they know that they need to gain the skills, but however, due to other issues that happen inside the prison system, or they're happening that day at that particular prison, it cuts into their education time. Let's see, we also have lack of access to computers, calculators, and so when you don't have the time in the classrooms, you don't have the spacing effect working on what the student needs help with, leads to low test scores and a low number of high school diplomas. Okay. All right. So how can this example of this be applied to JIT? All right. I would point out that one, the TABE, pre-GD, and GD tests are all computerized. All right. Test formats change. Computerized programs help students prepare, especially GD Academy. Practice with computers and calculators at least 3 times a week. I once did an action research report with this, and I tied in that more time students have access to technology and know what they're doing with access to technology, especially with the inmates in penal facilities, will have better skills to pass the GD test, again, which I stated is computerized. All right. So that is the end of my presentation. I know it's rather lengthy, but there was a lot of information. But I wanted to kind of give you an insight on what I what I do, and what I specialize in. And again, like I said, I will send my bullet points to you in the PDF so that when you click on my video, you can kind of follow along with what I'm talking about. Thank you for reviewing my video, and have a good afternoon.